My mother-in-law manipulated my fertility tests to destroy my marriage. He kicked me out pregnant, accusing me of cheating. But when he discovered the baby was his, he lost his mother forever, and she'll never meet her grandchild. I'm 27 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer. And honestly, I need to tell this story because there are still days when I can't believe all of this actually happened. It's been like a year and a half since my marriage to Daniel exploded in the most horrible way you can imagine, right when I was pregnant. And although things now are, let's say, better, I still struggle to process how someone can be so manipulative and cruel. I guess I should start from the beginning. When Daniel and I met in college and everything seemed perfect, because looking back, I should have seen the red flags with his mother Eleanor from day one. Daniel and I got married when we were 25, after being together for like 4 years. It was one of those relationships everyone envied. You know, we understood each other super well, we had the same life plans, we wanted kids, a house, all that. His family was another story. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, never liked me from the moment she met me, and the reason was completely ridiculous. My mom, Rebecca, had a very wild life when she was young, like parties, several boyfriends, nothing crazy, but enough for Eleanor to look at her like she was the worst thing ever. And by extension, I was also unacceptable to her. Daniel always told me to ignore her, that his mom was just old-fashioned like that, and she'd eventually get over it. Spoiler alert, she didn't get over it, she just got worse. The first 2 years of marriage were good, honestly. We lived in a small but nice apartment, we were building our careers, and we started trying to have a baby after the first year because we both wanted to be young parents. And that's when the problem started. Months went by, like 6, 8, 10 months, and nothing. At first, we didn't make a big deal of it, like, okay, these things take time. But after a full year of trying, we were worried. Daniel was especially stressed because his mom wouldn't stop asking when we were going to give her grandchildren, and I could see how that was affecting him. We decided to get fertility tests done to see what was going on, and this is where Daniel's uncle, Howard, comes in, who coincidentally owned a fertility clinic. We thought it would be convenient, more private, and plus he'd give us a discount. How stupid I was, seriously. My test results came back perfect. Everything normal, ovulating well, no problems. Daniel also got his tests done, and according to Howard, everything was fine with him too. He just told us to keep trying patiently and gave us some advice about timing and stuff like that. We kept trying. And the truth is, the process started to wear down our relationship. Sex stopped being romantic and became a chore, an obligation marked on the calendar. Daniel became increasingly distant and moody, especially after visiting his mom, who obviously was filling his head with who knows what. I tried to keep spirits up, to be positive, but there were days when I'd cry in the shower thinking that maybe I'd never be able to give him a child. And then, after more than a year of trying, it finally happened. I took a pregnancy test one morning in March. I think it was March, or maybe late February, I'm not exactly sure, and it came out positive. I just stood there in the bathroom for like 10 minutes, just staring at those 2 lines, unable to believe it. When Daniel got home from work, I told him, and I swear I'd never seen him so happy. We hugged, we cried with happiness, we made plans, we talked about names, about how we were going to decorate the baby's room. We decided to throw a small party to announce it to our families, and it was beautiful. My mom cried. Friends were excited. Even Eleanor seemed happy. Although now I know it was all an act on her part. But literally a few days after the party, Daniel changed completely. He became cold, distant. He avoided me. He'd come home late from work, lock himself in his office, barely talk to me. At first, I thought maybe he was stressed about the baby, about the financial responsibility and all that. So I tried to talk to him, but he'd tell me he was fine, that he just had a lot of work. I knew that was a lie because I knew him. We'd been together for like 6 years total, and something was definitely wrong. 2 weeks went by like that, 2 horrible weeks where I was pregnant, nauseous all day, trying to work from home, and my husband was practically ignoring me. You know what it feels like to be pregnant with someone's child who treats you like you're invisible? It's horrible. It's like your body is doing something miraculous, and the person who's supposed to be most excited just isn't there. And then came the day that destroyed everything. It was a Friday night. Daniel came home around 9. I was in the living room watching TV and eating crackers because that was the only thing I could keep down. And he walked in, and I immediately knew something very bad was going to happen because he had this expression on his face, like a mix of fury and pain I'd never seen before. He sat down in front of me, took some papers out of his backpack, and said, "We need to talk." My heart started beating super fast because I thought he was going to tell me he didn't want the baby or that he was leaving me. But what he said was 1,000 times worse. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I know you cheated on me." Just like that. I was like, "What?" Because I literally had no idea what he was talking about. I told him he was crazy, that I'd never cheated on him, that how could he even think that? And that's when he threw the papers on the coffee table and said, "I have proof, Jessica. I have the results of my fertility tests and I'm infertile, so that baby isn't mine." I froze. I grabbed the papers with trembling hands and sure enough, they said Daniel had a practically non-existent sperm count, that it was basically impossible for him to get someone pregnant naturally. And I was there thinking, this doesn't make sense. Howard told us everything was fine. This has to be a mistake. I tried to explain that to him. I told him there had to be a mistake because the results we saw months ago said something else, but he yelled at me to stop lying, that his uncle had shown him the real results, that apparently Howard had been covering for me for some reason, but the truth had come to light. I was in shock. I literally couldn't even form coherent words. And Daniel kept yelling at me, asking me who it was, when it happened. How could I do that to him? I swear I tried to defend myself. I told him I'd never been with anyone else, that the baby was his, that there had to be an explanation, but he didn't want to hear anything. He told me I had an hour to pack my things and get out of his house. 1 hour. I was pregnant, like 7 weeks along. It was my house too. We'd signed the lease together, and this man was kicking me out like I was trash. I tried to reason with him, but it was useless. He locked himself in the bedroom, and I just sat there crying, feeling like my world was falling apart. I didn't know what to do, who to call, how to process what was happening. Eventually, I called my mom, told her between sobs what had happened, and she came for me immediately. I packed what I could in 2 suitcases, mostly clothes. I didn't even think clearly about what to take because I was on autopilot, and when my mom arrived, we left. Daniel didn't even come out to say goodbye or see me leave. That was the last time I was in that apartment. The next few days were a nightmare. I stayed at my mom's house, in my old room that she'd converted into an office, sleeping on a sofa bed, feeling like my life had gone to hell in a matter of hours. My mom was furious, obviously, and wanted us to confront Daniel and his whole family. But I was too destroyed to do anything. I cried all the time. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And on top of that, I had to deal with pregnancy nausea. I tried calling Daniel like 1,000 times, but he never answered. I sent him messages explaining that there had to be a mistake, that please, we should talk, but nothing. After a week of this, my mom convinced me to hire a lawyer and file for divorce. She told me, "Jessica, that man kicked you out of your house while pregnant without even listening to you. Do you really want to be married to someone like that?" And she was right, honestly. Even if Daniel discovered there was a mistake and the baby was his, the fact that he'd treated me like that was unforgivable. I hired a lawyer named Linda, a woman around 50 years old, super professional and direct, and she took care of starting the divorce proceedings. She also advised me to do a paternity test as soon as the baby was born to legally establish that Daniel was the father, because I knew he was. There was no doubt in my mind. Like 2 months went by, 2 months where I basically lived in survival mode, working from my mom's house, going to my prenatal appointments alone, preparing to be a single mother. Daniel didn't try to contact me that whole time, and I honestly started accepting that my marriage was over, and I was going to have to raise my daughter alone. By then I already knew it was a girl. And then, one afternoon in May, I got like 15 missed calls from Daniel. I didn't answer the first ones because I thought maybe he was going to yell at me again or accuse me of something else, but he kept calling insistently. I finally answered, and the first thing he said was, "Jessica, I need to talk to you. I discovered something horrible." I told him I had nothing to talk to him about, that my lawyer would handle everything, but he started saying it had been a mistake, that his mom and uncle had lied, that the fertility test results were fake. I was speechless. He explained that he'd gone to Uncle Howard to ask for more details about the tests because he wanted to better understand his infertility, and that Howard basically broke down and confessed everything. Turns out Eleanor had orchestrated the whole plan. She hated my mom and by extension me so much that when Daniel and I went to get fertility tests, She convinced Howard to falsify Daniel's results to make it look like everything was fine, hoping I'd never get pregnant and we'd eventually divorce over it. But when I did get pregnant, she panicked and asked Howard to give Daniel the real results showing he was infertile, so Daniel would think I'd cheated on him. Everything, absolutely everything, had been an elaborate lie by that horrible woman to destroy my marriage. And it worked, because there we were, separated, in the process of divorce, and me pregnant living with my mom. Daniel was crying on the phone, telling me he was so sorry, that he'd been an idiot, that please forgive him, that he wanted to fix things. And I didn't know what to feel. Honestly, on one hand, I was relieved to know I wasn't crazy, that I was right about the baby, but on the other hand, I was furious. I told him, "You know what, Daniel? I don't care if it was your mom or the Pope who falsified those results. You decided to believe them without giving me the benefit of the doubt. You kicked me out of my house while pregnant. You didn't speak to me for 2 months. And now that you discover your mom is a manipulative psychopath, you expect everything to go back to normal? It doesn't work like that." He insisted he wanted to see me, that we needed to talk in person, but I told him everything we had to talk about could be through lawyers, and I hung up. My mom was just as outraged as I was when I told her what had happened. She told me Daniel didn't deserve any kind of forgiveness, that what he and his family had done to me was unforgivable. And I agreed, like you can't just destroy someone's life and then say, "Oops, my bad," and expect everything to be okay. Daniel kept trying to contact me over the following weeks, sending me long messages explaining he'd cut contact with his mom and uncle, that he'd spoken with lawyers about possible legal action against them, that he was going to therapy to process everything, but I didn't want to know anything anymore. My lawyer continued with the divorce proceedings, and surprisingly, Daniel didn't object to anything. He signed everything he had to sign, accepted all the terms. About 4 months after all the drama, when I was around 6 months pregnant, Daniel sent me a message asking if we could meet to talk about custody arrangements when the baby was born. By that point, I'd had time to process things, and although I was still super hurt and angry, I knew I had to be mature about this for my daughter's sake. I didn't want to be one of those moms who uses their kids as weapons against the father, you know what I mean? So I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near my mom's house, a public place where I'd feel safe. The meeting was weird. Daniel looked terrible, honestly, like he hadn't slept well in months. He'd lost weight. He had dark circles under his eyes. He apologized again, told me he understood if I could never forgive him, but that he wanted to be present in his daughter's life. I told him that was fine, that we could have a shared custody arrangement eventually, but that I had conditions. The main one was that Eleanor and Howard couldn't have any contact with my baby, ever. No visits, no calls, nothing. Daniel agreed immediately, told me he didn't want those people near his daughter either after what they'd done. We also agreed that all custody time would be supervised by my mom until the baby was older, and I felt comfortable leaving her alone with him. Daniel accepted all my conditions without arguing. A few weeks later, Daniel came to my mom's house to apologize to her personally. That was important to me because my mom had been the target of Eleanor's prejudice from the beginning, and all of this had happened because of that. Daniel asked her forgiveness for having believed the horrible things his mom said about her, for not having defended me better when Eleanor treated me badly, for everything. My mom listened to him, didn't forgive him, and honestly, I don't think she ever will, but told him she was going to respect that he was her granddaughter's father, and that as long as he treated his daughter and me well, she wouldn't cause problems. It was an uncomfortable but necessary conversation. The divorce was finalized when I was 7 months pregnant. It was all very simple because we had no property together, we had no significant shared accounts, and Daniel didn't fight anything. We signed the papers at my lawyer's offices, shook hands in a super formal and weird way, and that was it. 5 years of relationship and 2 years of marriage ended with a signature on paper and a handshake. It's funny how something that was so important in your life can end in such an anticlimactic way. Grace was born in August. A beautiful and healthy baby weighing 7.5 pounds. The delivery was complicated. I ended up needing an emergency C-section because her heart rate dropped. But in the end, everything turned out okay. I let Daniel know when we got to the hospital, and he arrived like 2 hours later, right after they took me out of the operating room. They let him come meet Grace in my recovery room. And I'm not going to lie. Seeing him hold her for the first time was emotional. He started crying, asked the baby for forgiveness for everything that had happened. And in that moment, I saw the Daniel I'd fallen in love with years ago, not the man who'd kicked me out of my house and accused me of horrible things. I spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from the C-section, and Daniel was there every day, bringing me food, helping me with Grace when the nurses told me to rest, behaving like the father he should have been from the beginning. When we left the hospital, my mom picked us up and Daniel asked if he could come help at the day I housed during the first few weeks. My first reaction was to say no, but the truth is, I was going to be alone. My mom worked during the day, recovering from major surgery and with a newborn. So I accepted, but made it clear to him he'd sleep on the living room couch. And that's how we got to the current situation, I guess. It's been like 2 months since Grace was born. Daniel practically lives at my mom's house, sleeps on the living room couch, helps with nighttime diaper changes, with bottles, with everything. We're like roommates who have a baby together. That's the best way to describe it. We're not together. Definitely not. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive him for how he treated me. But we're making co-parenting work because Grace deserves to have both her parents in her life, even if those parents aren't married anymore. My mom says I'm too generous, letting Daniel be so involved after everything that happened. And maybe she's right. I don't know. But when I see Daniel holding Grace at 3 a.m, singing her horrible lullabies with his off-key voice, I see he's trying to make up for the time he lost because of his mom's lies. That doesn't mean I forgive him, or that we're going to get back together. But it means our daughter is going to grow up knowing her dad loves her, and that's what matters. Eleanor and Howard, by the way, haven't tried to contact us. Daniel made it very clear to them they're not welcome in his life or Grace's. And apparently Eleanor is furious that her plan not only didn't work long-term, but also resulted in her completely losing access to her granddaughter. Karma's a bitch, I guess. Sometimes I wonder how someone can be so cruel, so manipulative, as to destroy their own son's marriage just because they didn't like where their daughter-in-law came from. It's sick, honestly. Last week, Grace woke up crying in the middle of the night, and Daniel and I both got up at the same time to attend to her. We got to her crib at practically the same time, and he looked at me and said, "Sorry, should I pick her up or you?" And I told him, "You can pick her up. I'll prepare the bottle." And as I walked to the kitchen, I thought about how a year ago, my life was completely different. How everything was destroyed and then rebuilt into something I never imagined, but that somehow works. It's not perfect. It's not even what I planned, but we're making it work day by day. And I guess that's enough for now.